Welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. Fun time had by all. I'm PD Rave, and here with me is my team, my squad, my crew. We've got David.
PD introduces me first because of the potential of me saying something really random and weird to throw everybody off.
Mm-hmm. And we've got Drew.
I've never liked something Roger Goodell has done until this week. I'll date the podcast that way, and you can assume things.
And this is a Swedish pastry. I figure I'll keep the theme going. This is a semla. Semla is a famous Swedish cream bun. It's made with a plain white wheat bread bun, which is slightly flavored with cardamom, then cut in half. The inside is filled with a layer of delicious almond paste and a generous amount of vanilla-flavored whipped cream. I learned that just now. And today we're talking about music once again, talking about an album, and the provider of the album is David. David, what have you got for us this week?
PD, this week on the Record Breakers podcast, we have an album from April of 2022 from a band that has always kind of been in my periphery. No, we're not talking about periphery, maybe someday. But they're one of those bands in the progressive rock genre that I've always kind of caught in passing, maybe a song here and there, but never really dived deep into any of their work. But they're definitely one of the more well-respected progressive rock bands from Sweden, dating all the way back to 1973, including the famed Roine Stolt, who eventually left this band to form the Flower Kings. The album is Urskog, and the band is Kaipa.
Mm-hmm. Not Kappa, Kaipa. Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
I didn't really have any, other than them being Swedish, Prague. I was expecting maybe some, like, let's say heavy, music on the Prague side, knowing, modern Swedish, not knowing when this band started. If I would have known when they started, that maybe would have changed my expectation of that a little bit. But other than that, I didn't have any besides, this album art looks dope. So,
yeah. I wasn't
That's
sure.
Always a good way to start.
Yeah. I was, I don't know what to expect. I knew, I kind of had, there's built-in expectations when you say like progressive and DJM is the one presenting it. But there's never any assumptions. And there's always just hope, and I was hoping for some and looking forward to some really nice type music. Also, I just something with the woods. That's just a beautiful sight right there. That just.
I was going to say, anytime a prog rock album cover makes you think of, like, Dungeons and Dragons, I think you're going to be in for a pretty okay time.
Mm-hmm.
It's an assumption you can make.
Or just a camping trip.
Exactly. Yeah. Or, camping trip or a good hike, or a good bike ride, as it were. David, how would you describe this album musically?
I would describe this album as being classic progressive rock in the sense that this is a band that has been around since 1973. So they're not a throwback band per se, because they've always been around. Aside from the time where they were split apart in the 80s, they've always done this. And they have a modern production. The rhythm sections are clear. Every member of the band is tight and knows their parts and really plays them really well. The songs leave room for an atmosphere and allowing yourself to kind of take everything in and not so worry so much about the next verse or what's coming next. You're able to just kind of sit down and just let it go, essentially. But when it does get there, you're treated to Hans Luton's voice as well as Alina Gibson, and occasionally they sing together. Also, big shout out to the drummer on this album, Darby Todd. And this is the second time I've bought an album with him recently from the band Frost, Day and Age. Darby Todd is playing drums on this album as well. So I believe the expectations you can have is maybe not so much kind of the next hook or the next verse or the next chorus, but more of a whole album piece. Or maybe a whole song piece where you really sit down and you just kind of let it happen and let it take you where it wants to take you.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe let it take you on that journey while you're laying in bed back there. Just with your headphones on. But yeah, Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, musically, first off, I think what hit me, and this sort of gets into what I was expecting. I was not expecting the brightness that this album has. Like tonally, I was expecting a little darker, a little heavier. And that's neither a positive or negative. It's just fact. So that was actually really, really cool, like diving into this and sort of getting that like brighter feel to it, that more like older prog feel to it almost. There was this layer of mystery to a lot of it, where as it transitioned, especially in the like longer songs, because there's a couple of songs that have 4 digits in the time code there, folks. This is one of those albums, and those songs really, I think, push sort of that tone and that mystery. There's parts also that get really fusion jazzy, which I really, really love. The bass player, I'm going to say Reingold because I don't know if it's a J or a Y.
Jonas Reingold.
Jonas.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, his name is not Jonas. Got it. Understood. Okay. Jonas Reingold was just phenomenal. As a bass player, I love when I can really hear it. There's also this, like, I can't explain it super well. My prog vocabulary is bad, but the tone and the way the tracks fit feels very of a time, even though this was made this year, if that makes sense. This feels like guys who have that sensibility coming from that age, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that outlook on music sometimes. And it's funny you say lay there with your headphones on, just letting it go over you. I think there is a certain Venn diagram of like music nerd and fantasy nerd that this type of music is perfect for. There's a druid that I can think of that has maybe some Panama Red and having a grand old time listening to an album like this. But it is one of those albums where you can relax and let it sort of take you on that journey if you are one to do those things.
It is an album.
Yeah.
It is an album. It's not just a collection of songs. It is an album.
I sometimes have a hard time listening to the Mars Volta, even though they're one of my favorite bands, because I feel like a lot of those albums, like, I want to consume as a whole. And this album, spoiler alert, I guess, for the C block, but this is going to be one of those things where it's like, oh man, I want to go back to that, but like, I'm going to need to dedicate a little bit of time for that.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. It's just a thing that exists.
Yes. Yeah, because it is definitely an album, and it thematically it there's a thematic purpose and construct to it, because it is about a year in like a year in the wilderness or a year in Sweden. You know, it is about the seasons and the times changing, and how they progress through the year and the weather and the environment. It is that feeling of adventure and wilderness. It starts in the dead of winter, the frozen dead of night. It gets into like the spring, the summer, kind of, and that's where that brightness really does shine, because it is about finally getting out of the Scandinavian winters and being able to be out in the wilderness, be out, see your world, see the beauties of nature, kind of see go on bike rides, for example, because this album was largely inspired by the primary songwriter, let me get his name, Lunden,
Hans Lunden.
Hans Lunden, taking bike rides in the Swedish wilderness throughout the spring and the summer, and kind of like this inspiring these pieces and inspiring this music in him, and you can really feel it because it's very bright, celebratory. It is like a really nice like hike in the woods type music. This would be a great album if you just start your hike, start from track 1, and maybe make it loop as you're walking through the woods and going through your trails. This would be perfect for that. There's great instrumentation. There's great like movements as they go through like that first track. We'll talk about like key tracks, but like it goes through different like really cool movements. It's hearing the two vocalists is really fantastic. Patrick Lindstrom, I believe, is the vocal. Yeah. It has this really great like quality to his voice. It kind of like, it gave me Freddie Mercury vibes a little bit. It gave me like Queen vibes a little bit. I don't know if I'm totally off base there, but like in like the best way possible. Like it's just like this like power, this really nice like sound to it. I could also be thinking of like a billion other things, and that's just the one that I pluck in my head. And then Alina Gibson coming in was a nice surprise. Like it was a very nice change. I did not expect for that to happen because I hadn't looked up the lineup before popping in the record and listening to, or pressing play on Spotify, I should say. And yeah, it totally is really great. And I think like the like of a time but not dated. It's, I think the word that I put down, is very classic, is, and I think it fits with the theme, evergreen. I think the evergreen. I think this is a very, for people who can really like enjoy this music, this is a very evergreen sound because it's not gonna like feel dated, even though it is like an older, like there's elements of it that are from that were like innovated at another time, but it still feels pretty timeless. Like it's still really good like tones that it's like you never feel like, oh, this is old ass music. Especially with the modern, obviously with the modern recording techniques, you take that same sound and you very modern recording quality. It is still high quality. It still feels right. But yeah. Let's talk about key tracks. David, what would be some of the key tracks, or I guess key moments or key movements, if you want to really put it down that way, because there's only a few tracks.
I will say that we kind of have to talk about the opening track, The Frozen Dead of Night.
Mm-hmm.
I liked many moments in this song. I think this is the song that really encapsulates the entire album, kind of telling the story of the whole changing of seasons and the appreciation of nature and changing of time. I especially like the part where it got into saying "Welcome Spring."
Mm-hmm.
That part especially. And the instrumentals really were enjoyable in this song. I would say this song is not a vibe, but it is several vibes put together in one musical piece, and it takes you on a journey, which is really, really cool. I feel like In a World of Pines is a slightly more digestible version of what we just heard, with some really solid guitar melodies and Alina Gibson's voice carrying the song really, really well. I think that In the Wastelands of My Mind, if I were to give somebody a track to maybe use as a sampler, this would probably be the one. It's only 6 minutes, but it is very much a part of the album as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what will be some of your key tracks, key moments?
There's not a lot of tracks, but they're the two that I thought were really cool. That really, really stood out were actually the beginning and the end. The Frozen Dead of Night. Starting with something like that sort of the wistfulness, I guess, is the best terminology I could use for the synth work here. Like leading you through that like journey through winter. The sort of beauty in it, the barrenness of it, but also like the hope that it can bring. And then the tension that comes with Bitter Setting Sun at the end, the way they work with elongating notes, and the way they work with sort of stretching those time signatures out and stretching the notes out to really make you feel that tension of, all right, well, we're going back into it. Like, we know it's coming. Like, and that build up. I thought the way they did those feelings and those moods with music is something that it takes a smart and confident set of musicians for everyone to hit that point. And I think they did that really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you guys pretty much touched on those moments, like the way the Frozen Dead in the Night really like sets the tone and sets the thesis of the album really well. Like I said, In the World of Pine, we're introducing Lena Gibson's vocals and caught me by surprise, and by pleasant surprise. It was really nice. I would say shout out to Urskog, is because Swedish is nice as a language. It's just nice hearing Swedish. It's a pretty language. Also, the beginning of Wilderness Excursion is just a night of like one review called it like edgy jazz intro. I saw the progressive aspect called it like an edgy jazz intro. It's an interesting way to start a track, and it works really well. And yeah, they like, and like Drew said, the Bitter Setting Sun, it just puts a nice little cap at the end of the album. Let's talk about let's bring it back around the horn and talk about some conclusive thoughts. Drew, what will be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
This is an album. This is the first time, I think, or at least the first time in a long time, that an album made me think of the drummer for the band I used to be in. His dad was a big he was a bassist and a big fusion jazz guy. And me and Jake would always poke him with other types of music to sort of listen to that would maybe scratch some of those similar itches. And this is something that the next time I see him, I'm going to be excited to tell him about. It is something that if you are the type of music nerd to really sit and let your music like just hit you and take you on a journey, whether it be figuring out what the singer was going through, or like this album, figuring out the pictures they're trying to paint with sound. And like letting yourself like almost get a synesthetic response to some of this. I think that you would very much enjoy this record.
This is a complete story. This is a complete album. This is, like David has said, and he'll probably reiterate that this is a complete album. And it is an album worth taking a flyer on. Because it is, especially if you kind of want to like get another really good example on the things you can do in prog. It is just nice type classic prog, like David said. It is good melodies, good instrumentation, good musicianship. But it is a bundle of vibes, as it were, bundle of emotions and like musical landscapes, and I think it works really well. I think this is an album that is a good looper. It's a good one to like loop in there, just kind of like just let it go back and forth and back and forth. I highly recommend going in there and just getting it in your, like, getting it around you, either really good speakers or really good headphones, just getting it like in your entire space, just all up in your entire space. David, how would you conclude on this album as a whole?
I can definitely agree with Petey in saying that this is definitely one you can put on some really good speakers and just let it kind of take over your space. And it'll take you places in a good way. I will also say that I'm glad we took a couple of weeks with this album, because I wanted to really absorb it, because I kind of wanted to take off my prog fan hat and really give it the best kind of analysis and insight that I could without coming in with my natural bias. I can understand for anyone that this would be a lot to take in, especially right at the beginning. I listened to this more than a few times, not just because I enjoyed it, but also to really absorb the music and really get some good insight to it. Because it really does take your standard, typical music conventions and throws them out the window. And you kind of have to do that coming into this if you're going to listen to this album and sit down with it for an hour. If you are willing to kind of flip your brain and your ears to the right frequency, you'll find some really fun hooks, some really good melodies, and some really great instrumentation. And you'll find really two talented singers going back and forth in a way that isn't jarring, it isn't shocking. They complement each other really, really well. The dog agrees.
Mm-hmm.
And they fit the overall sound really well. Yeah, and they go out of way to make it sound pleasant to the ear. It's not harsh. It's not abrasive. It's the opposite of those things. It is meant to welcome you in. It's not trying to be in your face or very intense. It is meant to be listened to if you're sitting outside on a really nice day and you can just kind of enjoy it as an atmospheric piece. It is, again, a complete album. If you take it that way and not just go song by song, you'll get a great experience from it, I think. I know that's not for everyone, but if you're willing to give the album a chance, I think you'll get a pretty good 5-course meal. I think you'll find something you like in this. It is a 5-course meal of an album. It absolutely is. But I think it's a pretty good meal.
Yeah. Those are our thoughts on Kaipa's Urskog. Go and check it out on our Spotify playlists. Play Record Breakers the home name, do your due diligence and your due diligence. There's 2 playlists, one with the episodes slotted in and one without, just so you can just listen to the music. Yeah, that's a nice fine example. On that Spotify playlist will be next week's record, and it's going to be provided by Drew. Drew, what have you got for us next week?
So next week, gave a couple of choices, and the choice that was picked is something that a bit more popular than this. Might be a little bit more well known, but something that is pretty recent. Came out back in the first single dropped in April. I believe this came out just a few weeks ago. Special by Lizzo.
Well, look forward to that. You know the song. You've heard it on TikTok many times. But let's talk.
Inescapable.
Exactly. But let's go ahead and explore.
I like the Swedish Chef version.
Yes. Oh, of course. Yes. But we're gonna explore the rest of the album, and I'm looking forward to it. I have actually literally have been thinking I should really actually listen to Lizzo, because the song is as inescapable as it is. And not to give away too much of the content, but it is still a good song. It's still a great song. So I look forward to talk about it next week. But that is next week, and this is this week. I keep forgetting to play the music, but I'm gonna play the music this time. I think maybe there you go. And you can of course find us all over the internet. The David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at XDrewSuperX. I'm at PD Brave. The show's at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com. Rebellion.net for this and other shows. Rebellion TV on YouTube and on Twitch. Catch us on Twitch live. So if you're watching the YouTube, you can see the little logo I put on the top of my monitor. Just take up the whole screen. Rebellion TV on Twitch. Watch us do Record Breakers live, and also our D&D show Through the Tomes. The Witcher stream with me and Daisy. We're gonna get back on that next week. We got some more fun things for that. And more fun things. We also have something fun wrestling related we're kind of working on, that it may involve me going down a rabbit hole on modding the new WWE game. So look forward to that. But keep an eye out. Follow the channel, see when we go live. Like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Little toot.
Live long and prosper. Possum stew.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.